Testing 1, 2.
I don't know if the temperature's up or it's just because the room is full.
It's because it's warm outside.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
It's Saturday.
Uh-oh. Got Pelly's there.
I know. It's huge. We didn't start, so I didn't have to kick.
Yeah.
Yes, we need the mayor.
Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Monday, November the 6th, 2023. This evening, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by our village clerk, Pramod Shah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker,
Here.
Trustee Robinson,
Here.
Trustee Kuhn,
Here.
Trustee Johnson,
Here.
Trustee Pure Slovin,
Here.
Trustee Klein,
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Here, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Is there anything anybody wants removed? Trustee Klein.
A, please.
A, what A?
The ordinance regarding the drive-throughs.
Okay, under the Corporation Council's report.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovin,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. And I believe Ellen Bloom Barish is with us. Would you stand just for a moment? Thank you very much. With that vote, the board confirms the appointment of Ellen to the Fine Arts Commission. And thank you very much. We appreciate your service and everything you're going to do. I assure you, you're going to be put to work very soon. So thank you very much. She has a very impressive background in the arts and humanities, and we're very fortunate to have you. Thank you very much for your service. As you may have noticed in the first couple rows, we have some special guests this evening, and I have a proclamation I will attempt to read, and I say attempt, you will see what I mean. Couple of the words I may struggle with just a little bit, so you'll have to excuse me if my pronunciation is imperfect. Whereas Diwali, a festival of great significance, is celebrated annually by millions of Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists throughout the United States and all across the globe. And whereas the Hindu, Sikh, Jain, and Buddhist communities, which are comprised of mostly Indian and South Asian Americans, as well as other diverse races and ethnicities, constitute a vital part of Skokie's diverse ethnic and social fabric, and whose languages, cultures, and religious beliefs have enriched our community. And whereas the word Diwali is a shortened version of the Sanskrit term Deepavali, which means a row of lamps. And whereas Diwali is a festival of lights during which celebrants light small oil lamps, place them around the home, and pray for knowledge, peace, and universal well-being, which we need a lot of these days. Whereas the rows of lamps symbolize the light of knowledge and truth within the individual that signifies the destruction of all negative qualities, violence, anger, jealousy, ignorance, greed, fear, or suffering. In other words, Diwali celebrates the victory of good over evil. And whereas Diwali is celebrated by Hindus a day of thanksgiving for the homecoming of Lord Rama and the beginning of the new year for many Hindus. And whereas for Sikhs, Diwali is celebrated as the day that the sixth founding Sikh guru, or the revered teacher, Guru Hargobind, was released from captivity by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. And whereas for Jains, Diwali marks the anniversary of the attainment of Goshka, or liberation, by Mahavira, the last of the Turk conquerors, the great teachers of Jain, Diwali, at the end of his life in 527 BC. Whereas for Buddhists, especially newer Buddhists, Diwali is commemorated as Ashok Vijayadashami. Told you I might slip up. The day the great Emperor Ashoka embraced Buddhism as his faith. And whereas on behalf of the village of Skokie, it is with great pride that we recognize the contributions of all Hindu, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists active in all aspects of our vibrant economy and our civic society. Now, therefore, I, George Van Dusen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, do hereby proclaim November 12, 2023, as a day of global observance of Diwali per the Hindu lunar calendar as Diwali Awareness Day in Skokie. And I would like to ask Pramod Joshi to please meet me. Mr. Joshi and Ms. Bloom are going to become very good friends. He is on the Fine Arts Commission with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Namaste and thanks, Mr. Mayor George Van Dusen and Village Board of Skokie for honoring Indian Diwali. Happy Diwali, everyone. Diwali means light. Diwali removes all kind of darkness. Diwali is the brightest and the festival is so wonderful, which is very well known in the whole world. And my personal message to everybody, Earth is our home. Environment is our roof that we got to remember. Let's try to keep them clean and bright. That's the message. By the way, this event is sponsored by Hindu American Foundation. Mrs. Yash Desai is the Midwest Regional Director of Hindu American Foundation.
Now, with the help of Mayor George Van Dusen, Pramod Bhai Shah, Bailal Bhai Patel, Rohit Bhai Joshi, Mrs. Usha Khamaria, Mukesh Bhai / Mike Shah, Dr. Chandrakant Modi, Babu Bhai Verma, and rest of the Diwali awareness participants, please join us for group photo of this wonderful event in a village of Skokie. Namaste everybody, namaste. Come on down, let's have picture
Well,
taken.
we will do that after. We've got one more thing to do, and then we'll take
What is my
a brief break. We've got something else we need to do first. So, thank you, though. It gives me great pleasure, special pleasure, to next introduce our village clerk, Pramod Shah, who will do a special swearing in for us.
Yes. On. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I
I,
state your name, please.
Denise Franklin,
Having been appointed to
having been appointed to
the office of Police Deputy Chief
the Office of Police Deputy Chief
in the village of Skokie,
in the village of Skokie,
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and in that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Police Deputy Chief
of Police Deputy Chief
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Denise, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
First, I'd like to introduce our police chief, Brian Baker. And also, there's a rumor that Tony Scarpelli is somewhere around here. Our previous police chief, who is very proud of you, by the way. Would you introduce your family and friends who are with you?
Sure. Basically, this entire back section. And they're scattered throughout. But I have my parents here, Mr. and Mrs. Godfrey Franklin, Eva Franklin. I have my wonderful, beautiful wife, Shannon. Daughter Gwen. All of my sisters and nieces and brother-in-law, and everyone that I work with. I'm so absolutely grateful and honored to work with each and every one of you. And I really do enjoy serving the residents of Skokie, working with you, and I'm just very grateful right now, so, and humbled by it all. So thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Village Manager. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Just want to give you a small vignette that I think says a great deal about Deputy Chief Denise Franklin. During COVID, as you're all very well aware, I'm sure, we were all very anxious, and the hospital staff was overworked, to say the least. At the same time, our police department was overworked. And Denise came up with the idea that we, the village of Skokie, should have a parade winding its way from PD, Long Grosse Point Road, all the way up to the hospital, encircling the hospital, just as a way of saying, thanks, we appreciate everything that the medical personnel are doing for us in the middle of this pandemic. Now, this was before vaccines. So none of us knew, would there be a vaccine, and if there would, when would there be a vaccine? But it was a way of lifting the spirits of those of us here at Village Hall who participated, and those at the hospital. And if you can imagine, in the middle of it, there's a little bit of a thump in the throat, but we get up there and we're going around, and all of the hospital personnel were out on the grounds applauding our police department and our fire department for all of the work they do. And of course, it was Denise's idea, and she organized that. And at no point did she ask for any applause or any pat on the back. And I remember having a conversation with her afterwards. It was a couple of weeks afterwards at some event over at PD, and I just said, thank you for what you did, because I knew it meant a lot to the hospital. And she just said, well, just doing my job. No, that wasn't just doing her job. A couple weeks ago, I had lunch with the president of the Skokie Hospital, and the first thing he said to me when we sat down, he said, you know, I never got a chance to formally thank you. Do you know what it meant to our hospital personnel to have you coming, not me, but meaning the village, coming up, organizing a parade to thank us? So that really lifted our spirits at a very difficult time. And I think that's why we're very fortunate to have Denise Franklin as a deputy chief. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you. So let's now take a moment. Everybody can congratulate our new deputy chief and thank our Hindu and Sikh and Jain and Buddhist friends for being here with us this evening. So we'll take a short break.
So I wrote them out.
Which mansion is
To see you.
the what? Oh, yeah, see me.
Boy, we sure.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, if everybody would please take their seats, thank you. The village board is back in session. Next item on our agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen and trustees. Good evening, everyone. Item A is regarding the proposed implementation for 3 referendums, nonpartisan elections, staggered terms, and hybrid representation, including election districts. And so this evening we'll be presenting a proposal that's been worked on for the last several months, implementing these. The citizen-initiated binding referendums were approved last November. Once the referendums were approved, the village became responsible for implementing them. As you'll recall, the mayor and the board expressed their desire for this to be completed professionally and above board, and encouraged information sessions with the community. I was delegated as the person to oversee the project, recognizing both the importance and need to be in compliance with law. We did some research, looked at how other municipalities had implemented these. We developed a scope of services to solicit professional services, especially in the area of law, in order to join us in working through this project. The scope of services was developed, the open solicitation process was conducted, and we created our team. Internally, the assistant manager joined us, Nick Wyatt, Mike Alexic, the assistant finance director, Patrick Dignan, the communications and community engagement director, Alex Franz, who's at the podium this evening, our management analyst, Meredith Gioia is the communications manager, and then from external to the organization, Peter Kretikos, who you'll be hearing from later this evening, is from the Institute for Work and the Economy and is a mapping expert. And Jason Geisinger from Kleinthorpe and Jenkins is an attorney who you'll be hearing from later this evening, and Scott Euler is also an attorney with Kleinthorpe and Jenkins. And so this was the team that worked through putting together a proposed implementation. Public input and engagement was an important component. We conducted 3 public meetings on August the 14th, September 11th, and October 10th. We posted a page on the website that kept the community and interested individuals informed of the process. We solicited input through surveys and establishing an email box dedicated to this project. And of course, we received written comments. So this evening, we're going to walk through the 3 referendum and the proposed implementation. You can see the referendums there on the screen. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, who will address the first 2 referendums.
All right, good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Jason Geisinger. I'm with the law firm of Kleinthorpe and Jenkins. Mr. Mayor, members of the village board, thank you very much for entrusting us to work on this project. For the village, it was really a pleasure for my partner Scott Euler and I to work through this project and have an opportunity to work with Manager Lockerbie and the implementation team, as well as go through the public process. It's really been a pleasure for us. So as Manager Lockerbie indicated, we're here to talk about the implementation of the 3 referendum questions that passed at the November election. The first referendum question calls for the establishment of a nonpartisan system of local elections. And we're proposing that this be implemented through an amendment to the village code, which is included in the ordinance that was provided in the village board packet. And basically what a nonpartisan system means is that candidates who are running for office cannot list any political party affiliation on their nomination papers that are circulated and ultimately filed with the local election official, and no political party affiliation may be listed on the ballot for the elections. And I think it's important to note what a nonpartisan system does not mean. It does not mean that candidates are prohibited from getting together, campaigning together, coordinating their platforms, or getting together with political parties and accepting the support for political parties. So the nonpartisan system will begin at the 2020 November 2025, the April 2025 election, and it will, one difference that's worth note, in addition to what I've already said, is that as in previously, candidates filed for the general election in April. Now all candidates will file for a potential primary for the February primary election, so that's important to note. Now, the second referendum question that was approved by the voters deals with staggered four-year terms and biennial elections. And our task in looking at implementing this particular referendum question was obviously to create a system where the village trustees serve four-year terms, some being elected at one election, others being elected 2 years later, and it would obviously take place once every 2 years. That's the biennial component of the new system. Now, for Skokie to implement this system, we've introduced an election schedule where a specific group of trustees will be up for election every 2 years. Initially, some trustees are going to need to run for and serve a 2-year term, and that's necessary to kickstart the staggered system of elections. In staggering the terms, we also needed to account for the hybrid system mandated by the third referendum question, where 2 trustees will be elected at large and 4 will be elected by district. Now, in determining which seats will stand for election at each biennial election, we considered first that the mayor and the clerk positions are unaffected by the referendums, which means they'll both be up for a 4-year term in 2025. And I'll just put this up on the screen as I talk through this. Next, we considered that the hybrid statutory systems in Illinois generally provide that the at-large trustees be elected at one biennial election and the district-based trustees be elected at another election. We also looked at the ways that terms of offices are generally staggered under the Illinois Municipal Code. And the way this is done is to promote balance in the biennial elections, aiming that one half of the board would be up at one election and the other half at the next biennial election to the greatest extent possible. Now, based on these considerations, we believe that the election schedule that you see up here on the board is fair, balanced, consistent with statutory election systems under Illinois law, and accomplishes the fundamental objective of that particular referendum question of having staggered 4-year terms for village trustees with biennial elections. And I can run through what is being proposed to take place. First, at the 2025 election, you'll see that we're proposing that the 4 district-based trustees would run for those 2-year terms. And then the mayor and the clerk would be up, as well as the 2 trustees at large for 4-year terms in 2025. Then moving forward to 2027, at the election, the district-based trustees would again be up because they previously had 2-year terms, and then they would be up for election for the 4-year terms at that point. And then the mayor, the clerk, and the 2 at-large would not be up yet because they had just been elected to 4-year terms in 2025. And then moving on to the 2029 election, the mayor, clerk, and the 2 trustees at large would again be up because their terms that began in 2025 would be expiring at that point. And then the district-based trustees would not be up that particular year because they would just have ran for 4-year terms at the 2027 consolidated election. Now, the third referendum question deals with a hybrid system for electing officials, where 4 of 6 trustees are elected from districts and 2 at large. And to talk about the implementation proposal in this regard and the actual creation of the legislative districts, I'm going to turn the floor over to Peter to discuss the creation of the 4 trustee districts.
Well, good evening. just a word about my background. There's not many people run into folks who draw maps. I came to the process when I was working for the General Assembly in 1981. I'm old. Worked for the state senate then, and then in the in the 90s, when Cook County went to single-member districts. Before it was, you were elected either at large in the county or in the suburbs, I'm sorry, or in the city. I was the staff person that worked with Commissioner Ted Lekowitz in drawing the first map for Cook County with single-member districts, and I've drawn every map for the Cook County Board. Later with Commissioner Lekowitz, and then following that with Commissioner Sims ever since. So I have some history in this. I know the area and the county well. And just as a sort of a personal note, from age 3 through 5th grade, I lived at 8423 North Karloff, and then finished high school in neighboring Wilmette. So we have family that's been in the neighborhood in this area since the mid-50s. So in approaching this, it's been, to me it was important to enunciate a set of principles that would guide this process. You just don't blindly go in and start drawing lines. You have to have a purpose behind the lines and the processes that are especially sensitive to the needs of the community and to the interests of the community. Some of these are constitutional. One is the notion of one person, one vote, meaning that the districts have to be largely equal in population. The rule of thumb is plus or minus 5% from the ideal, but the closer you get to the ideal, the better. Second, they need to be compact and contiguous. So contiguity is an easy one, and that is that no holes and no separations. So you start drawing a line, and then you come back and meet the line at some point with no holes in the middle. On the compactness side, that is a matter of judgment. And what often happens is compactness is sometimes affected by large areas that are without population. And you have to put them somewhere. And so they kind of stick there. It looks odd, but then once you understand that there's nobody there and that you're really trying to find a place to put it, then it makes some sense. Fortunately, in the case of Skokie, we didn't have that kind of problem. We were able to maintain these districts in almost equal geographic area. And then comes the community sensitive issues. One is is there an area of shared identity? And what was really interesting about Skokie is that just your own processes, the way that you configure your how the police department is organized, garbage collections, and so forth. Skokie is largely organized in quadrants, and it revolves around a center point, about Main Street and Skokie Boulevard. Second, it needs to be easily understood by the voters. And what do voters have to work with? Major landmarks, thoroughfares, boundaries, other physical or jurisdictional factors. Now, one of the factors that we looked at, which also addresses the community of interest, is the question of are there existing jurisdictions within Skokie where people tend to organize, or some people tend to organize their lives. School districts is an example. And so one of the principles that we looked at, and we consider this also to be a sort of a natural boundary factor, is that if there's a school district boundary that works, we try to stay with it, and we try to keep the school districts contained as much as possible. So you'll see that we actually have 4 districts that are undivided in this particular map. Another is, what happens at the opposite edges of a district? You know, the points where they're furthest apart from, each other. And there the issue is, do the people on one end have something in common with people in the other end? And what that spoke against were district configurations that were like stripes, where you started at the top of the Skokie and you ended up at the bottom of Skokie, or horizontal stripes, which again sort of reinforced this idea of sticking with the quadrants. We attempted to observe what I called residential neighborhood contiguities where possible. And you'll see that there's one part of the map at the top of District 1 and 2, where 1 and 2 come together. There's that residential area where you have a lot of assisted living that's north of the cemetery. And it would have been, I think, wrong to configure the boundary so that we kept it at Skokie Boulevard, and then that neighborhood would essentially be disconnected from the residential area to the west as a district. Obviously, it's still in Skokie, but in terms of how do you represent it, how do you talk to people, that sort of thing. So that's an example where we tried to make sure that we to the best of our ability, we didn't create problems for neighborhoods where they were isolated from the rest of their district. And then finally, you have the situation where Eden's Expressway cuts across the bottom of Skokie. And there's industrial land in that area as well. Some neighborhoods are sort of pockets in that as a result. And I wanted to be sure that we didn't cut that off. So when somebody asked me, where, how do you start? And one of the things I said, well, you pick a corner. And I started in the southwest corner because I knew that was the area where we could run into trouble in ending up with a district that somehow or another had to meander in and chop off a part of an area that was already chopped by the Eden's Expressway. It's sort of like the analogy is when you're painting a floor, you got to make sure you end up at the door. And so that's the process. We're dealing with a fixed area. Let's see, what do I do next? Oh, okay, got it. Hold on. So, the process. As the village manager said, we went through several public hearings. First step was to educate the public. We called it, redistricting or districting 101, just to sort of walk through and help people understand what the basic principles are, share with them what some of the issues with respect to the Voting Rights Act and other federal and state laws that we had to consider in the process. Second, we gathered public input. As I said, I've sort of grown up around the area. I live in Oak Park right now. I spent a lot of time driving around Skokie in the last several months, just refamiliarizing myself with the village, seeing all the changes that have gone on and so forth. But a big part of it too is just hearing what people had to say. And then one of the things that we heard was that the public wanted to have 3 maps to look at. And so what we did was we actually did come forward with three maps. They were based on all the same principles, but they had some important variations between the 3. And we gathered input on the basis of those 3. Checked the record in terms of the formal submissions that we got from the community, and also held one more public hearing in the process to sort of get reaction to the 3 maps and so forth. And then finally presented a map to the public for its review, and that map is the same map that is now before you. So we numbered them 1 through 4. It's the easiest way to kind of keep people's, keep understand, just what what the name of the district is. Started in the top left and went clockwise. There's no magic to why one was named 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. That was just, we started with a corner and went around. You see the District 1 is fairly tightly configured. It is, as I said, up north of the cemetery, the Memorial Cemetery. That residential area is connected to the neighborhood to the west. We followed the major thoroughfares of Grosse Pointe Road and Skokie Boulevard. And I'll get to the bottom in a second. We'll rotate around and then we'll get to the point where 1 and 4 come together in a minute. One of the, we heard testimony very early on about the importance of keeping the Devonshire Park community together. And I came to understand that that was not literally just the park, but for the larger community around it, extending to the east. In addition, you'll see that these black lines, by the way, are the school district boundaries. So we were able to keep this district intact as part of 2. And which is why Greenleaf is the boundary, because that's the bottom of that district boundary, in the top of 673 and a half. District 3 is basically 73 and 73 and a half, what it amounts to. Now, as I said, we weren't able to keep all the districts intact, and that's partly because they all do come together at one point. So we inevitably had to split up 2 of the school districts in several different ways. It wasn't something I was looking to do or looking forward to do. It happens, just give me a second, that it was inevitable to split up District 68 anyway because it was too big for it to be a trustee district. So that, just the simple math of that required it to be split up. District 4 is comprised of School District 72, which is the bottom part. And again, the configuration was to, even up the population as we go north. So we did get some testimony around this particular neighborhood. And the process of districting is that you're dealing with a fixed pie. And you can only divide a fixed pie so many different ways and still come out even. And so where we ended up having to balance the populations with all 4 districts was in this particular neighborhood. And we went through a couple different configurations and finally landed on one that we thought was consistent with the rest of the map. So for instance, Greenleaf is the boundary here, Greenleaf is the boundary there. We follow major thoroughfares here with Grosse Pointe Road and then the Terminal Road there. And then we do duck in a little bit because Terminal doesn't go directly into Main Street. It jogs over a little bit at Niles Center Road. We pick that corner up and so forth. The other thing that we got a bunch of testimony on was the importance of keeping this neighborhood here and this neighborhood here in one district. And why is that? Because those are 2 neighborhoods where you have a high proportion of multifamily dwellings. And we thought that in order to provide an opportunity for residents who live in those dwellings to have a voice in matters here through an elected district, that it was important to keep those 2 neighborhoods together as part of one district. There was some request to actually pick in, again, some multifamily residents up here and try to see if we can move them over into District 1, but it would have completely, the result of that would have been significant changes in the rest of the map. It was too large of a population to absorb. So we stayed with those boundaries to accomplish the multifamily issue. And it does correlate with some income differences. there are two areas in Skokie where you can see concentrations of people who are living more economically, and that was part of here, so we kept that intact. And then the other neighborhood is in here, which we couldn't connect. So, but we didn't divide them either. So we didn't put them into 2 or 3 different districts. We kept them together. Finally, on the issue of voting rights, one of the things I look at first is whether, there are 2 protected minorities in Illinois pursuant to federal court actions, Latinos and Black Americans. And where you see instances of either of those populations not being able to elect candidates of their choice because of the configuration of the districts in which they live, then you have to try to accommodate those populations by drawing districts so as to ensure them an opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Skokie is very diverse, and we did look at some maps, showing us the demographic profiles of the village, and that diversity extends across the entire village. And you can see the result of that because if you see the differences in population. Now, one thing about Asian you have to consider is that the Census Bureau dumps all Asians into one category. So East Asian, South Asian, there's no distinctions between the two. So it's a blunt instrument in terms of Asian population. But if you look across, the distributions are really pretty equal. And so, which tells me that there was no way we could have built a district to accommodate one. If you saw, a certain group really bunched into one and then but it isn't quite getting there, then you'd have to take a look at it. That's not the case here. So, and then again, I said these are largely equal in population. 3 is the largest in terms of square miles, at 3 square miles. But you have to recall, part of that is that you have that large industrial area in the southeast corner, where you have the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, you have the CTA, maintenance facilities, and so forth. So you have a lot of empty land there, and then that would account for a lot of that square mileage. So, John, you're next.
Thank you, Peter, for all your work and the presentation this evening. So tonight is the first reading of the proposal and the draft ordinance, and so the second reading is scheduled for December 4th, for the village board meeting on December 4th. And so we would be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
I have a question for Peter.
And we will take up the ordinance. How many ordinance?
There's one ordinance.
One ordinance, right?
Correct.
Correct, okay. And that we will take up at that meeting, the ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ralph?
Yeah, sir, you stated that there were 3 maps, and what turned out, number one, what was the differences in the maps? Was it just the lines you drew?
Yeah, this final map, we named them Orchard, Marsh, and Prairie. And then this final map we actually called Forest, but we changed that for the purposes of the meeting. As it turned out, Orchard was the one that seemed to satisfy what we got in terms of public feedback the best. The difference being that configuration in that Lockwood neighborhood. We call it the Lockwood neighborhood, by Grosse Point Road, Greenleaf.
Number 1?
Yeah.
District 1?
Yeah. And, well, we'll do 1 and 4 between the two. So,
I'm gonna have, if we can put that map up on the
yeah, we could put
on
it
the
up.
screen, if that would be helpful to
It
see
would.
the 3 different. Do you want to see the 3 different maps?
I just want to know what was the deciding
The
factor.
determining factor.
Yeah.
Part of it is the population is the closest in the map that is being proposed, and so all 4 quadrants have as close to the same population as any map that has been reviewed throughout the month-long process.
So this was Orchard right here. And you'll see that the real difference was that we blocked off that Lockwood neighborhood there. And to us, we had some concerns about compactness. We also thought that it was somewhat isolating, the way that was configured. And so that's one of the reasons we opted for fours. The other, here's Prairie, and you can see we did this thing here. We call it the witch's hat. We had to have names for these things. And the real problem with that was, as I was saying, that you have two areas where you have multifamily dwellings, and that this essentially separated the two neighborhoods, you know. And so we thought that was inappropriate. And this one, which was Marsh, I think our greatest concerns again was where we lopped off that one neighborhood and separated from the other. And also, this is the one that had the greatest population deviation. And so we opted for a version of Orchard, modified it so that we actually got pretty close in terms of equal population.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Question. First, I want to thank John for your efforts, for your leadership on this. It was a tremendous task. Thank you to the team, Mr. Criticos and team, for your hard work on it. Don't go far, Mr. Criticos.
I was getting my water.
I got you. The one question that I do have is, knowing that all of the districts are, very close as far as in population, how frequently should we have a population balance, especially given the fact that we will continue to have anticipated housing, which could increase the population?
You are now committed to a process of every census drawing a new map. Because or at least revisiting it. Now, it may be that the populations haven't changed all that much and you keep the same map. But every 10 years after the census, you need to go back and revisit the process and determine whether the maps conform to the one person, one vote, whether it addresses other community interests that we didn't recognize this time that have come up over time. So you have that, you're now on that cycle.
2031 would be basically the next
Right.
census of 30.
Yeah, 2030 is the census, right?
Yeah.
So that could totally kind of change and
You
shift
can.
different
And
districts.
I usually don't answer a question I haven't been asked, but I'll raise it because it's sort of implied. We can't draw on the basis of what may happen.
Mhm.
You have to draw on the basis of what exists with the census data. So there may be, Old Orchard, for instance, there's a consideration to add, residential there. We can't draw it until it happens.
Sure. And one additional question, the anticipated cost associated with the 10-year difference or whatever it is. What is that?
So for this initial implementation, we've budgeted $50,000 for the professional services, and so for the every 10-year update, it'll be focused more on the map, and so it shouldn't be half that cost, and so somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000, I would imagine, to do the every 10-year map update.
Trustee Kuhn?
Just following up on the question regarding reviewing the population change, is there ever a threshold where there would be a change in the number of districts, or are we just looking at a sort of a resizing of the redrawing of the map based on population size at that given time?
John, you want to answer that?
So the referendum was very clear, and I'm going to ask the legal team to also respond, but the referendum was very clear that it was 4 districts, and so 4 districts is the government for the electoral process from this day forward, and so it's 4 districts. But Jason may have a more legalese answer.
I was just going to concur with you, John. As you said, the referendum question was specific as to the district, so It's not going to create a system where, based on the population, the number of districts would change over time.
I also had a question regarding this, with the elections going to nonpartisan. Wanting to understand the difference then what happens between the primary and the general consolidated.
Sure. So the purpose of the primary election in a nonpartisan system is to whittle the field down to no more than 4 times the number of seats available. So the way that it would work, I'll take the example of the mayor's office. For the primary election, let's say 4 candidates file for the office of mayor for the 2025 election. Even though they file for that primary, no primary would be held because there were because there were not more than 4 times candidates as seats available. So there would not be a primary, and those 4 candidates would automatically move forward to the general election in April. However, if you had 5 candidates, for instance, file, or 6, there would be a primary election for the purpose of whittling that field down to 4, and the 4 highest vote getters would then move on to the general election.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to also thank everybody who is part of this process and your leadership in this, John. 2 questions. One is based on what Trustee Kuhn just asked, and that was, I understand the 4 candidates for the mayor, so it's the same thing for trustees also? So now we have, so it's, you have to
Yeah,
do the
I could
math.
explain how that would
Yeah.
work between the trustee-based districts
Thank
and the
you.
at-large districts.
Thank
So-
you.
So when the at-large districts are on the ballot, there's 2 seats available. So everyone, the village voters would vote for 2, for 2 candidates, which means if there were 8 candidates who filed for the primary, for the at-large spots, in that case, you would not have a primary, and those 8 candidates would move forward. Voters would select 2, and the top 2 vote getters would be your 2 at-large trustees. With the district-based trustee positions, because there's only a single seat available within those subcategories, for lack of a better word, it would be the same calculation you would use with the mayor's office, where if it was 4 who filed, there would be no primary. If it's 5 or more, there would be a primary to whittle it down to 4.
Thank you. And then
Yes.
my next question is to the village manager. I know that we allocated implementation for these referendums for professional services of $50,000. I'm curious where we are in the budget and if we have exceeded it or have come in at budget.
We're anticipated to come in at budget. At this point, we've spent a percentage of that, but when it's all said and complete, I think we're gonna spend the full 50,000.
Thank you. And then will the additional elections, if we have to go into primaries, does that not cost the village money? I really don't know the answer. I mean,
As we navigate new processes, there may need to be expertise that is engaged, and so we'll have to kind of adapt as we go through the process.
But the elections, the ballot and everything is done by the county, not by the village.
Right,
Yes.
and I think the village clerk,
correct.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, the county is
I
responsible.
mean, the village clerk does not write the ballot.
Correct.
The ballot is done by the county.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, because there's these concerns about the possibility of triggering a primary election. I just want everyone on the board to be aware that we have the power to do something that the city of Evanston did just last year. The Evanston City Council put a referendum on the ballot to permanently get rid of primary elections. Did I say nonpartisan before? Primary elections, and they replaced it with a ranked choice voting system. So if this board ever chooses to kind of permanently get rid of the possibility of a primary election being triggered, we do have the power to put this on the ballot, and I would argue make our electoral system even better.
Trustee Suffolk.
I also want to thank John and everybody involved in this process. I think it was really, really well done, so thank you. Can you go back to that demographics chart?
Sure.
Because I thought that was interesting, and I think you implied that that's not really typical to have it be, to have the 4 districts be this well like equal in, so is that true? Or,
I'm not sure I would say it's not typical. I'm just saying that it represents the diversity of Skokie.
okay. And so going along with trustee Robinson's question, in 10 years or when the next census, if the demographics changes, would that also affect changing the districts?
It potentially could alter the districts insofar as you have an area where you have a very high concentration of one of the two protected minorities. And so that would require what I would think is a massive shift in the sort of the culture of Skokie, frankly. Because you don't seem to have that issue here. So that would mean that some neighborhood would have a high concentration of one population or the other.
Okay, thank you.
So, December 6th, was it? I can't remember. It was
December
around-
Sorry, I have another
December
phone.
4th. Don't show up December 6th. December 4th will be the final vote, second reading. Trustee Kuhn.
Sorry, I had some additional follow-up questions. You had mentioned the school districts being split, 68 being one of them. What were the other districts that were split? 69.
And there's a little bit of 70, but we kept it all in one place.
Okay.
And it was just where they are.
Okay.
Well, I take that back. One district was simply too large.
Yeah, I remember that, yep, okay.
Just had a quick question, following up on trustee Sucker's. You talked about a significant shift in population. Would that be like what would be a critical mass, like a percentage of that area? Would it be?
Well, you're asking me to give you a hard number on something that I just can't imagine happening in Skokie, I mean, to be honest with you.
Like 10%, 20%?
You'd have to have adjoining areas where you have a clearly distinct majority population of either Black Americans or Latinos. And I could point to neighborhoods in Chicago where you have, my full-time work is running an Institute on Workforce and Economic Development. So we ran a series of maps looking at if there are neighborhoods where women are dominant, and we found that there are neighborhoods where women are the 75% of some neighborhoods have women as family heads of households. It would take something like that to draw attention to this, drawing a line or trying to incorporate that neighborhood into a single district.
Trustee Robinson, were you also asking about the total population? If there's a change
Yeah, I
in the
know,
total
was that-
population?
Yeah, I'm thinking it probably most likely is a small cluster in a district, not the total.
So, Peter, it might be helpful to talk about the plus or minus 5% and how that range
I think
plays
you're
out.
talking about racial breakout.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And I was trying to answer that question.
I don't have any questions, but I just do have some final comments about the implementation, and I also have some people I really want to thank. For my observations, this ordinance is really excellent, and it merits a lot of celebration. In my time on the board, I am not sure I've ever been more proud or more excited to vote on something. This ordinance represents the most important update to our village elections since at least 1961. And as one of the lead designers and advocates for these 3 electoral reforms last year, I believe this ordinance implements these reforms as they were designed and as they were intended. I have 3 big thank yous that I want to give. First, I want to acknowledge that these are voter-initiated reforms. So I want to thank the over 100 Skokie residents who organized this grassroots effort and helped get these 3 questions on the ballot last year. I know some are in the room tonight. You did something that the Skokie Village Board had declined to do for over half a century. You gave Skokie residents the opportunity to improve the way we elect our village representatives. And I thank you all. Next, this may be overboard, but I want to thank the over 18,000 Skokie residents who voted in last November's referendum election. Whether you voted yes or no on any of these referendum questions, you participated in our community's democratic self-determination, and for that, everyone deserves thanks. And last, like some of my colleagues, I want to thank our village manager, John Lockerbie, for working for the past year to help implement these reforms. And John, this might be I hope this isn't an overstatement, but in my opinion, you are living proof that Skokie residents got it right in 1957 when they voted to install a village manager by referendum. In 1957, Skokie residents mandated that our village government be managed by a nonpartisan, apolitical professional, just like you, John. And your nonpartisanship and your professionalism have really made this ordinance possible. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone. That's all for me.
So it will be on the agenda for December the 4th.
Would it be possible
Yes.
for us to vote on this tonight, just as a first, I know it's a first reading, but just as a,
We don't vote on first reading. I mean, I think there's a consensus that it'll come up
sounds good.
and pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. See you on the 4th.
Yep.
Thank you.
Item B is regarding the,
If you don't mind, something's happened to the air conditioner, so I'm gonna take my jacket off, and if anybody else is a little warm.
Yeah, you can. It is hot in here. You can take your coat.
Glad that's you, not me.
Mayor, thank you for that. So item
Do we
B,
need a vote? I'm not sure if we need a vote on that.
I think it was unanimous. Item B is regarding the 2023 property tax levy ordinance and property tax levy abatement. Tonight is the presentation of the proposed property tax levy. The request is for 15.4 million and some change. This represents the 33rd consecutive year that the village board has adopted a levy that is equal to the village's 1990 levy. Tonight is the first reading, and we'll be back on Monday, November 20th agenda for second reading and adoption. The finance director, Julian Prindy, is going to provide an overview of the property tax levy this evening.
Thank you, John. Good evening, members of the board and of the audience. I'm pleased to come before you and present the 2023 tax levy, as well as the 2023 tax abatement. The 2 ordinances included in your packet are appearing before you in first reading and will be before you for a vote at a future meeting. These matters are routine and annual. They are required by state statutes, and they are necessary to facilitate the levying of property taxes. Just a few highlights of the presentation. As John mentioned, in 1990, the village's property tax levy was just over 15.4 million. At the time, the board adopted a 5-year freeze beginning in the 1991 tax year, and the freeze was extended thereafter as the village's finances were able to support funding for operations and capital and everything else we do without the need to raise property taxes. This 2023 tax levy is the 33rd consecutive year to reflect this freeze. And once again, as presented, the levy for 2023 is that same $15,456,695. We do this every year, so I'm just gonna spend just a couple of minutes going through the process of how property taxes make it from here or from your vote at the next meeting to tax bills. Tax entities like the village board and others, Park District, library and so on, decide what their property tax needs by evaluating their budgets and their overall policies. Recommendations are then made to the board. Elected officials approve a particular levy, typically in conjunction with the budget process. As you're well aware, We plan for property taxes and the amount necessary to fund our operations during the budget, bringing this action to you today. We communicate the ordinances to the county. County assessor then spreads out the the levy amount that we request over the tax base of the village. They prepare the assessed value of properties, and then the state provides a number that adjusts the assessed value to create what's known as the equalized assessed valuation. Each property owner then pays an allocated share or is charged with an allocated share. Payments are made by the property owner to the county. The county eventually transfers those funds to the village throughout the year, but predominantly around the two first and second installment due dates. We have some preliminary data on 2022 tax year assessments from the county. This graph represents the village's overall tax base, what we refer to as the equalized assessed valuation in thousands of dollars. So you can see back in 1990, the total EAV was just over $1 billion. And today, this year, the 2022 EAV is just about 3.1 billion, has increased approximately 3.8% annually, and overall 195% higher than 1990. The breakdown that you see at the bottom is actually from the prior tax year, as we don't yet have the data for this year, but overall a good mix of commercial, industrial, and residential in the village. We have just under 4,000 commercial properties, just shy of 500 industrial, overwhelmingly 21,900 residential properties, and 200 lots registered as vacant land. The breakdown is that of the assessed value, not the count of property. So fairly evenly split between residential and everything else. As I mentioned, the 2022 assessment data has just become available. 2022 was a reassessment year for Niles Township and the village of Skokie. Again, those details not yet fully available, but we know from some information the county has posted that this reassessment has impacted valuations for several categories of properties. Residential assessments have increased about 33%. Commercial, and particularly commercial apartments, up 84% from the prior year. No change in nonprofits, 32% in commercial alone, 36% in industrial, and overall about a 34% increase in assessed value. Again, that does not mean property taxes. It just means that the county look at the prior year's sales data and determine what the market value, the assessed value for these properties would be, coming up with these figures. These have not yet gone through the appeal process that many property owners are familiar with, so it is yet to be determined what the total assessed value will be for this year. Make a brief note of inflation. Because the village has maintained a frozen levy, we like to bring up the idea of inflation just to keep it into perspective as to how the value of money has changed while that amount has remained steady for 33 years. Had the village kept up with inflation, the levy that I would be presenting tonight would be almost $30 million, 29.9, which would be 14.5 million higher than the levy presented today, so almost double. Throughout this past 33 years, Skokie property owners would have had to pay an additional $227.3 million in property taxes. This year, had we gone for the full inflated levy, property owners, just residential property owners, would have to pay an additional $322 in 2023 alone. This graph is just a visual representation of the prior slide. You can see the green portion of it represents the frozen levy, and the reddish, I think, represents what would have been the inflated levy had we kept up just with inflation alone from 1991. So it stands to reason that as the village's amount has stayed flat, everyone knows property taxes typically increase because some of our districts in town really do not have other funding sources but to rely exclusively on property taxes. such as school district. The village's share of the $100 that you pay in property taxes has gone down drastically. You can see in 1990, $16 out of 100 paid in property tax would come to the village, and as of the 22 year, just shy of $6 comes to the village. As I mentioned, the school districts in particular really do not have the available revenue sources that municipalities do as the village, so they typically rely more heavily on property taxes, which is part of the reason why their share of that $100 in property tax bill has increased from the 1990 year. But this is just an easy way to show how, again, frozen levies work and how increases in taxes really go to fund different goals. Just a brief note on how the village uses the 15.4 million in property taxes. Again, presented originally at the budget meetings during April. We proposed 3.3 million of that 15.4 total to go towards public services, which includes administration, police, fire, public works, everything. About 2.9 million go to non-public safety pensions, that is the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. The remaining amount of 9.2 million is dedicated to debt. On that point of debt, the village's total debt service for the year, for the fiscal 2024 year, is just over 17.5 million. I would like to remind the board that in 2022, the village issued a large amount of debt in order to reduce the village's pension liabilities for public safety pensions. In doing so, we're able to achieve over 40 million in present value savings. However, those bonds are now in the repayment period, and the largest portion of the property tax levy goes exactly towards that. About 8.6 million goes to repay the pension obligation bonds. The remaining funding for the village's debt is as shown on the screen. About 4.3 comes from increment taxes from the TIF districts, about 1.8 from utility taxes. That 1.8 combined with the 8.5 is the total POB debt service. Telecom taxes, and just over $1 million. And then because the village reports on our books the library issued, the debt issued by the public library, we receive revenue from the library to pay their debt. About 1.2 million in that 17.5 pertains to the Skokie Public Library debt. Now, and I should note there's a debt series that receives another 611,000 of general property taxes. Again, as I mentioned, the Skokie Public Library, although a separate taxing entity, is required by state statutes for their levy and debt to be approved by the village board. So we include the library's tax levy with this presentation. Again, a separately elected board. The library reviews and adopts a budget on an annual basis for their purposes. Likewise, they prepare a tax levy for their own operations. For 2023, that levy is 12.3 million in operating costs. In addition, the $1.2 million that I mentioned in the prior slide goes towards funding their outstanding debt. The total levy for the public library is just shy of 13.5 million. And I should note that this is the 6th consecutive year that the library has not changed their total levy. And I don't know if Richard is in the audience, but I can take questions for the library if he's not here. That's all on the public library. The second ordinance included in your packet tonight is the tax levy abatement. In brief, whenever the village issues debt, a debt ordinance is filed with Cook County, which prescribes annual property tax assessments in order to cover both principal and interest required on that debt. So essentially, for the ordinances that we've listed here, on the left side of the county is ready to levy property taxes in order to cover that debt. Because the village funds debt through a myriad of sources, as I showed in a couple of other slides ago, we are required to take action in order to inform the county not to levy the property taxes which those ordinances call for. So in total, you'll see the first column of numbers, 17.5 million in debt service payments required for the year. The village has available 7.1 million, that second column of figures, which we now have to formally abate or inform the county not to collect, which leaves the total net levy of 10.4 million, which includes, as I mentioned, 611,000 for corporate Series 2019. The 611 is a village debt. The 1.2 million is public library debt. And corporate Series 22A, which is the general obligation bonds, as I mentioned in a prior slide, 8.6 million in general property taxes to repay that debt. As I mentioned, both of these ordinances are here for first reading. They'll be coming before you at the November 20th for second reading and adoption. I'll take any questions.
Are there any comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you.
Item C is regarding a commercial corridor storefront enhancement program for 4043 Main Street. Halal Market LLC, Skokie, doing business as Halal Grill and Market, is an independently owned grocery store and carryout of Indian and Pakistani cuisine. Halal is currently located at 5158 Main Street. Mohammed Hazib, owner of the market, was informed that the lease would not be renewed, which prompted him to purchase the property at 4043 Main Street, which is on the screen, enabling him to grow from 1,600 square feet currently to over 3,000 square feet. Also, the number of employees will be increasing from 4 to 7. The owner is traveling out of the country this week, and the store manager and his son are present this evening. Mr. Hasib intends to offer more food options to Main Street, including hot buffet-style stations, rotisserie chicken cooked on site, and many take-home grocery items. The new location has been vacant for over 3 years. The interior and exterior work that is planned includes a new kitchen, new floors, new lighting, new signage, upgrades to plumbing, and repairs to the walls and ceilings. The proposed store and market are on the screen. The village's storefront enhancement program is designed to encourage and assist commercial property owners in renovating and upgrading the buildings with a 60-40 split between the property owner and the village for eligible expenses. The village's portion is a reimbursement with a maximum of $50,000. When completed, Mr. Hasib's total investment is projected to exceed $500,000. A certificate of appropriateness was given by the Appearance Commission. Based on the project's estimates, the interior maximum payout is $30,000 and the exterior maximum payout is $19,090 for construction work and signage. Carol White, who is standing at the podium and helping with the photos this evening, is our Economic Vitality Coordinator and has been working very closely with the owner, and I appreciate your assistance this evening. It is staff's recommendation to approve a storefront enhancement program grant to Halal Market located at 4043 Main Street in the amount not to exceed $49,090. I concur with staff's recommendation and respectfully request mayor and board approval.
A motion to concur with the staff's recommendation. Trustee Pure-Slovan, Trustee Klein seconds. Are there any comments or any questions? Trustee Pure-Slovan.
I don't have a question, but a comment. I think that this is it's very exciting. We've been talking about Main Street for a while. It's an empty property that's been there for 3 years. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful addition, and I commend the recommendation and very supportive of Halal Grill coming to Skokie, increasing in Skokie because they're there, and developing this corridor in Maine.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure-Slovan,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Klein, aye.
Trustee Klein, Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Congratulations to the Halal Market, and thank you, Carol, for all your help. Item D is regarding providing the village manager authority to approve vehicle purchases approved in the village's capital improvement program. The automotive and truck industry continues to experience shortages and long lead times, presenting a challenge for the village to purchase replacement vehicles that are approved through our budget process. Fleet vehicles are increasingly difficult to find, and once available are often sold within hours or days due to intense competition in the low supply market. The supply shortage will not be resolved in the short run, especially for high demand vehicles like hybrids and electronic vehicles, or the EVs. The bi-monthly board approval process has not been conducive to securing the needed vehicles with these unusual circumstances. Skokie's fleet management staff is requesting a procedural change for purchasing vehicles and the associated equipment, allowing the manager authority to approve purchasing sedans, squad cars, small trucks, vans, and box trucks pre-approved in the capital improvement plan, which is part of the village's budget process, up to the budgeted amount through fiscal year 2025. I respectfully request Mayor and Board approval to authorize the preparation of a resolution by the Corporation Council to give the village manager the authority to approve municipal vehicles and associated equipment purchases pre-approved by the village board and the annual CIP budget.
A motion is in order. Trustee Sutker, seconded by Trustee Robinson. Are there any comments or questions? Trustee Robinson.
Just a quick question. I appreciate in the documents here, it says staff will continue to prioritize EV and hybrid vehicles. So I appreciated that as per our sustainability plans.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson.
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovin.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Items E and F were approved as part of tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report.
Thank you. Next item is report of our Corporation Counsel, Michael Lord.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, trustees and everyone gathered. I'd like to make my first item tonight turning on the air conditioning, but
Hear, hear.
that's really not on the agenda. So, item A is an ordinance on the agenda for second reading and adoption tonight. The first reading was on September 18th of 2023. This ordinance shall amend various sections of Chapter 118, 118 pertaining to drive-through facilities to reduce the impact the drive-through facilities have on the community with the following code revisions. First, specific language that defines a drive-through facility. Second, that it require drive-through facilities to be screened from the street and, when possible, be located behind buildings. Third, remove food-related drive-through facilities as an allowed use from the mixed-use districts, that being NX, TX, and CX, to reduce the cumulative impact of restaurant drive-through facilities in what are considered pedestrian-oriented areas. Fourth, reduce the parking requirement at drive-through establishments from one parking space for each 100 square feet of net floor area to one parking space for each 150 square feet of net floor area. Fifth, require that no mature, healthy trees can be removed to accommodate a drive-through facility as reviewed by the village arborist. And sixth, require that a professional study is conducted to estimate the number of vehicles that will use the drive-through facility per day, and that for every 100 vehicles calculated per day, there shall be a one-time requirement to plant a new tree on site, or a payment shall be made as a fee in lieu to the village to be used for tree planting in other parts of the village as determined by staff. Mayor, I would request board action on this tonight.
A motion is in order. Trustee Johnson, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Trustee Klein.
Yes, as regarding this proposed ordinance, rereading it, I have some great concerns regarding this. We just heard from, Mr. Prendy about our tax freeze for the 33rd year. And the reason we are able to do that is because we have sales tax. We even have a restaurant tax, which helps us so we don't have to raise our levy. I consider this ordinance anti-business, anti-economic development. Walgreens, CVS, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Wendy's do not put in any locations now without drive-throughs. So we are not stimulating business, we are not stimulating sales tax income. We are fighting against it, and we're like the salmon swimming upstream. We want business. Business is the lifeblood of any community, and we are not making it welcoming for businesses who want to have drive-throughs. These businesses count, their business plan is with drive-throughs. This also brings up that you want to lower the requirement for parking. So if they don't have drive-throughs are not allowed. You're allowing for smaller parking lots because now they only need one per 150. Congestion. And the other thing is the tree. We have in many developments relocated trees, whether they are mature or young. So to say that we cannot move a mature tree is something that cannot be legislated only because we don't know what the project is. Like I stated, I'll repeat, I think it's anti-business and I think it's anti-economic development. And I would like to see this looked at again. We could move a tree to build a massage parlor, but we can't move a tree to build a restaurant. I don't see it, sorry.
Only to respond in part, and I point out that Johanna Neiden is here with us tonight. She can respond perhaps to some of the concerns you've raised in terms of the impact on business growth. But I can state that we took effort in this slightly revised version from the previous meeting to accommodate and to make clear that there were accommodations that can be made so that we don't automatically out of the chute lose some of the businesses you've mentioned. None of this, first of all, we all understand, and I know you understand, but I just want to emphasize, none of this is saying no more drive-throughs.
Right, just in the districts that were listed, I understand that.
Right. No, we're not turning off drive-throughs, and there are communities that have done that, and that didn't seem to be the intention at all as this came through staff. We did clarify, as you saw, items 5 and 6 to make sure that there was, at least it was consistent with what we heard from trustees at the last meeting, that it not be onerous in terms of the quantity or numbers of dollars involved in the tree issue. I'll leave it to Johanna to respond more fully in terms of the question you raised, why only a prohibition on removing trees in a drive-through as opposed to other places. The only other thing I would point out again is that there is room in the ordinance for staff to make accommodation on some of these items. So it becomes a question of, do we really think that these are written in such a way that prospective restaurants and other businesses would simply skip over Skokie because it appears too heavily regulated? And we made great effort here to try to maintain an open-ended discussion, but setting forth guidelines consistent with some of the sustainability concerns. But I hand off.
Can I interject one more thing? You
Yeah.
brought up sustainability. I had a talk with a car dealer in Skokie this week, actually last week. As of 2022, every new car comes with the automatic shut-off when it's idling. So if our concern is emission while a car is idling in a drive-through, then that is a self-solving problem because the auto industry has already solved that for us. So I do not see that as an issue on this right now.
Yeah, and when you start to, at least in our review of the material, start to look at how the emissions are created, you don't know which cars are gonna come through a drive-through. You don't know if it's cars from the sixties, cars from the seventies, cars from if they're still around, or those with the shut-off, to prevent the idling. So, there's a pretty wide swing in terms of how much emissions are created, in these. But what we did test drive a little bit of this, keeping in the car parlance. When Dunkin' Donuts came through, they asked for relief on parking because one of the things drive-throughs don't need much of is parking because customers want to drive through. This gives them more space for stacking. So, and as you'll see from the Popeyes, the relief on parking helps make these businesses possible. So some of these efforts, in some ways, are actually encourage and support business because we're a very developed community. Drive-throughs are part of our demand, and being able to accommodate them on smaller sites versus creating a field of parking that wouldn't otherwise be really used in these situations. That was one of the things that we started to look at as we've worked this through. We've been doing this for several months. In terms of the trees, the reality is that there's not a ton of mature trees in locations where you might find a drive-through, but where there were mature trees, our hope is that those can stay and don't have to be removed. Certainly, we would, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues in Public Works, but we would work if there's tree pruning or other root pruning or other things that can help create the space for the vehicles and the business, or relocate the trees if that's an option, but definitely not, want to make sure we're trying their best to preserve. I think and again, we'll see if our applicant tonight would mention this when that item is up later, but one of the issues, there were several mature trees on that site, and in an early plan had full removal to accommodate all the parking that they needed. So we worked with the applicant to say, maybe you don't need as much parking, maybe we can keep the trees, and we can make this all knit together nicely. So there's always a balance when we're trying to make this happen. Definitely our priority is to be business friendly and welcome new businesses to Skokie, but also trying to meet the various goals we have for things.
So if somebody comes with a plan and he cannot put the drive-through in the back, he would, under this, would have to move trees. Would we have a system where he could appeal and, to get around this?
Yeah, I mean, there's always ability to seek relief in our codes, but the hope is that we can workshop through that, so you can move a thing here, or the stacking lane doesn't have to go exactly where they want to go. I think the nice thing about Skokie is no two drive-throughs are built the same. They've really worked to fit the sites specifically to those. You point to Culver's and Chick-fil-A and Wendy's, those drive-throughs all fit into those sites based on the needs of those particular triangles and rectangles. So I think there is a lot of flexibility when it comes down to how you can fit those pieces in.
I want to just emphasize again, because the point is well taken, but I think we have to look back to what we have drafted in the Corp Counsel office, and under 9B it says, the drive-through facility shall be screened from the public way and when possible, be located behind the building. That's indicative of what staff is intending to do.
Well, I don't know what you mean, the definition of screened, I really don't. I mean, I got an idea, but I'm not really sure what it is. I know of no other construction thing that has to be screened, so could you define that?
So we did talk about defining it, and then our concern was that we would be business unfriendly if we said you had to do a 9-foot by 8. Corporation Counsel and I discussed this. Our hope is that because these generally have to go through site plan approval, appearance commission, that these bodies will be able to review with the context of the code, but also screening, creating some kind of blockage, whether it's landscaping, whether it's using the structure of the building to stack it in such a way that the longer part maybe screens the stacking lines. Starbucks on Tui is a great example. We know there's a drive-through there, but the stacking line is is in a way that it doesn't, it is effectively screened by the building.
We actually can give another one specific example. The Walgreens at Dempster and Crawford.
No.
If you come through that drive-through, while you're sitting at that window, straight ahead of you, there are bushes. Tall, they go about, I don't know, 6 feet or so. And that was done actually to save that project, which initially was turned down by the board because of concern that headlights were gonna be shooting out into the neighbors across the street and on the public street that was right across the sidewalk. And it is sort of indicative of this type of thing. Creative methods to screen what might otherwise be an intrusion either on the public way or neighbors or whatever, so.
Okay, we can debate this point, it's that, wanna legislate something, but we're not gonna really come out and say what it is, so you can understand why I have a problem with it. So this is my concern with this proposed ordinance, and I really wish we, do not go forward with it.
Okay,
I'm
we have
sorry.
a motion on the trustee Pure-Sullivan.
So I also have many concerns about this ordinance, and I don't think that I'm gonna be able to support it, because I think that we are making it very difficult for businesses to come to the village. Up until now, you gave good examples of how we have accommodated businesses with their drive-throughs in a way that we're happy. So I don't know why we have to make it stricter or more difficult. Why is it that we're going in the opposite direction? You said that people have to come and apply, and then with staff accommodations. Well, I say then let's leave it as is. We've done a very good job, and it's been, proposals, et cetera, and working with businesses. But I think if we pass this, it's gonna be that Skokie is unfriendly for economic development. And I am concerned because it is important that we continue to with our tax structure the way it is. But I don't know how we can continue to keep a tax structure the way it is if we're making it more difficult for business to come into the village. I do not see this as being business friendly at all.
I have a question. It's just a question.
Yeah.
I know we have the Appearance Commission, who we really rely on for their goals, and also the Plan Commission. What's broken about it? It sounds like for years that's kind of worked as far as screening and holding any other business accountable to what the expectations are in the village. Like, what's the difference between just going through the current process as is and instituting new ordinances?
So I think there's a couple things. One, because there are some things like the reduction of parking, things like what happens to trees and other issues that are addressed in this ordinance. One of the things you can do to be business friendly is set the expectation up front with businesses, so they can look at the code. They can say, oh, I can do this. I keep going back to the parking issue, because there's sites like the Dunkin' Donuts at Lockwood that they needed to reduce some of their parking. They needed to come in for relief. If they didn't know that they had that capacity to do that with the Village of Skokie, those kinds of sites don't become accessible to businesses, because often seeking relief isn't an option in a lot of communities. They may not know that Skokie is welcoming of businesses. So this is a way that we can make sure that we preserve those things. Those are reducing the number of processes and hoops that somebody has to jump through helps make this business friendly. And this helps reduce some of those items of relief, reasons why something might not be supported, because it doesn't necessarily, it does need relief. It's not compliant from go.
Has that been a barrier in the past?
I've only been here a year and a change. I can't speak specifically, but in any community, if you can reduce the times that people have to go seek relief before bodies, it adds to entitlement process. Those are perceived barriers. In my 20 years of working in local government, people don't want to go through process always. And some are better than others, but it can be a barrier for some.
Barriers or opportunities.
Exactly.
Trustee Coon.
I hear that there are a number of concerns about whether or not the proposed ordinance will actually be encouraging towards new development. I think there's some gray areas that we're kind of trying to figure out what does that mean to have the ordinance versus the accommodations and what that look like. And I also hear what you're saying, which is being too explicit in the ordinance can also potentially be more harmful than intended. I would like some extra time, though, to further review this ordinance, and so I would move that we table this for now and bring it up at a future board meeting, just so that we have ample time to really dig a little bit further and get some of those questions fleshed out.
At what point would it be brought back?
It can be at the next board meeting. I don't think it has to be a long delay. I just want to request some additional time.
Okay. Is there a consensus that we would delay a vote on this for one meeting?
Obviously, I'm on board.
Or you might not be if you.
What other information, I'm just curious,
Yeah, why?
would you be willing to?
I think one of the concerns I'm hearing from both sides. One is that by having the ordinance, you're having businesses potentially jump through some additional hoops because then they would have to come back for those allowances, or that on the other hand, having those allowances, such as the reduction in parking and having that be explicit up front, would help to mitigate some of those initial concerns that businesses may have that don't understand that there are avenues to address or accommodate. And so I'm hearing both sides of the argument in terms of how it could potentially be a deterrent, as well as that it would actually be helpful and help mitigate existing concerns that businesses have. So just trying to weigh that out.
Okay.
Mayor,
Let me ask,
go ahead.
let me ask, though, is there a second to Trustee Kuhn's motion to delay a vote? Trustee Klein, okay. There's no debating. We call a vote on delaying the proposed ordinance on drive-throughs until the next village board meeting.
Yeah, I don't want to delay this too long. I'm just asking for
Okay.
another board meeting.
Just want to make sure that'd be part of the motion. So it will come back to the board on November the 20th. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Satkar,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Nay.
Trustee Pure Slowing,
Nay.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Nay. The motion passes, I believe, by one vote.
Mayor,
Am I
we,
correct? Did I do
Yes.
my arithmetic right? Okay.
Mayor, we would I'm jumping ahead for Johanna, but we would request then that during this interlude, preferably during the immediacy of the coming week, comments and thoughts be brought to us. It is very difficult when we leave a meeting and something is sitting on our desks and we're happy to do it. That's part of what we like doing, parsing language and finding clarity. But we really need feedback, otherwise we're guessing at what the requests are.
I know we just tabled this, but can I make a final comment about this?
Final comment, and we're moving on.
Just kind of reflecting on the conversation, I just want to say, I just want to remind everyone that we did last November pass a very comprehensive sustainability plan, and we did this unanimously. And so our staff has been great about bringing us sustainability-minded policy initiatives for us to pursue. And I think labeling them as anti-business is not really helpful to kind of the goal here. So I just want to say I want to really support our staff's work to help us reduce our community greenhouse gas emissions and help us make progress on our sustainability plan.
Yes, and I agree. This ordinance, actually, in my estimation, is pro-business because it gives relief to businesses for parking, and it gives them a certain amount of certainty. If there's one thing I hear about the village of Skokie and why developers like coming here, it's the ordinances are accessible, you know up front, And when you meet with staff, can I do this, can I do that? Is there any leeway to move a tree or contribute to a tree fund? And I think this ordinance represents a balance between sustainability and encouraging business. And contrary to my friends, I think it's the opposite, that this actually is pro-business and it's business-friendly while being sustainable.
I would hope and think that it's just a matter of clarity, perhaps, on some of these issues.
That's the lawyer.
That's the lawyer speaking. With that, Mayor, I would, that would be the end of this item. Items B, C, and D are ordinances from Corporation Council's report that were on the consent agenda at the beginning of our meeting tonight, and those were adopted at that time. Therefore, that would conclude my report for tonight.
Thank you.
Mayor, before we go to the Plan Commission cases, can I just make some comments under unfinished business?
Quickly.
Awesome. So during the unfinished business section, I just want to again note that the board has not yet reviewed a draft ordinance to update our appointment process for village attorneys. We discussed this issue publicly 6 months ago in May, and all of us unanimously agreed to move forward with an ordinance to update village code. But we're now nearing the end of 2023, and we have not taken action yet. Last month, in early October, I made an agenda item request. I requested a first reading of a draft ordinance to update this appointment process by the end of November. We only have one more meeting left until the end of November, and so I'm going to repeat my agenda item request just to make it really clear. At our next meeting on November 20th, I am requesting that we review a draft ordinance to update our appointment process for village attorneys as the board decided in May. Colleagues, many of you have said that you believe our agenda item process is working well, and so I hope this board will respect my right to make this agenda item request, and I hope that every trustee will make sure this item is on our next agenda. At our next meeting, I'm going to again be advocating for a very inclusive, transparent, and very explicitly nonpartisan appointment process for our village attorneys, a very open process, just like our current appointment process for village manager. Colleagues, I'm really asking for your help and support with this. I am asking us to finish this policy-making task by the end of 2023 so that we do not have to carry this issue into 2024. Thank you.
Plan Commission, we have 5 cases this evening.
Good
Mr.
evening, Mayor,
Luke.
members of the board. My first case tonight is case 2023-23P, a special use permit at 5219 Toohey Avenue. At the October 5th meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed the case request of Ruben Skokie LLC on behalf of VCA Animal Hospitals for a special use permit for veterinary services at 5219 Toohey Avenue in a B2 commercial district. The VCA Animal Hospitals facility will contain 6 examining rooms, offices, a waiting room, and a 4-station treatment area, a pharmacy, a lab, and an x-ray room. The petitioner intends to operate the facility in a similar way as a immediate care service that is offered by a health care provider for humans, and no overnight boarding services will be provided. The business will provide outpatient care only and will be open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., treating an average of 30 to 40 pets per day. 1 to 2 veterinarians will work at the business, and an additional 4 to 6 support staff. The Plan Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to grant the special use.
A motion to concur with the Plan Commission's recommendation for a special use permit, 5219 Toohey Avenue, VCA Animal Hospital. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Johnson. Are there any comments or any questions? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson, Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slowin,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Klein votes aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye.
Thank you. My next four cases are related, and it is for the area at 5206, 5238 Tui Avenue, and this is the site of the proposed Popeyes Chicken. In the first case, 2023-24P is a subdivision. In this case, the petitioner is asking to subdivide the existing property into two parcels. Let me move on into case 2023-25P, which is a site plan approval. At the October 5th meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed the request of Bond Tui LLC for a site plan approval for a existing multi-tenant commercial building at a new limited service restaurant with drive-through and relief from Chapter 118-218 to provide 136 parking spaces rather than the required 145. Site plan approval is required at this instance because modifications are being made to the buildings on a site 1 acre or larger in size. This application is submitted prior to the recent changes regarding drive-throughs, and such is not bound by those requirements. The petitioner has agreed to follow the spirit of the zoning code changes by including several of the policy recommendations in this project, including providing a plan for low operation will be modified if queuing becomes an issue and exceeds what is estimated in the traffic analysis, prohibiting deliveries during peak usage, providing mobile ordering options, providing some screening from the street, and leaving mature trees on the site. The original submittal raised many concerns from the staff, which revolved around circulation, parking, and landscaping. The fire department had reservations about the fire truck access. After multiple versions and reviews, staff is in support of the project, including the parking relief. In response to the staff's feedback, applicant is keeping the large mature trees on the east side of the site and providing better site circulation, a condition that will be added to encourage continual discussion regarding a plan B to remedy any possible issues if the stacking line proves to be a problem. In case 2326 is a request for a drive-through at the same facility, and case 2023-27P is a request for outdoor dining. And I need to remind you that each case has to be voted on individually.
A motion on Plan Commission Case 2023-24P, subdivision 5206 to 5238 Tui Avenue is in order. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Robinson. Are there any comments or questions
I
on the
have one.
subdivision? Trustee Klein.
I just want to get one thing clear. So we have a drive-through, we have a screening, and we have not moving trees, and we don't need an ordinance?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And the parking, and relief from the parking.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Nay.
Trustee Pure Slowin,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. Next item is Plan Commission Case 2023-25P, site plan approval, 5206 to 5238 Tui Avenue. A motion would be in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Pure Slovan. Are there any comments or questions? If not, call the roll.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Nay.
Trustee Pure Slowin,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. Next is Plan Commission Case 2023-26P, special use permit for a drive-through, 5206 Tui Avenue. Motion is in order. Trustee Robinson, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Are there any questions or comments? If not, call the roll.
Trustee Sutker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson.
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Nay.
Trustee Pure Slowin.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Wendes.
Aye, the motion passes. And finally, Plan Commission Case 2023-27P, special use permit for outdoor dining. A motion is in order. Trustee Sutker, seconded by Trustee Johnson. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson.
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slowin.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Wendes.
Aye, the motion passes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. The next item is public comment. Before asking for public, I know.
Okay, sorry.
Before asking for public comment, I do want to announce something that was announced this last Friday, I think, Friday. Our village clerk is going to be retiring. His last day on the job will be January the 3rd. On our website is a job description and an application. So if anybody is interested in applying, please fill out the application and send it to my office. Vicky Vargas, sitting in the back, she will get the application and make sure I get everything. And if you have any comments or questions, please call the office, and I will certainly be glad to talk with you and try and answer your questions. Yes, ma'am. Everybody, 3 minutes. Everybody gets 3 minutes. John, get yours.
I'm ready.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Dr. Marla Miller. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed school psychologist. At the village board meeting in September, the village adopted Suicide Prevention Month. It was stated that the #1 cause of death for children, teens, and young adults is suicide. I work with teens who live in Skokie and the Lincolnwood area who attend Niles North and Niles West. I'm here to tell you that we currently have a new mental health crisis among our teens. These same teens did not have any difficulty functioning at the time of the past village meeting. However, since October 7, they have been exposed to harassment, hate, and anti-Semitism within the very walls of their Skokie public schools, Niles North and Niles West. On behalf of my community, I'm asking to please protect our vulnerable students from pro-terror demonstrations, signs, messages, and hate. We cannot be like the bystanders who allowed the Holocaust to take place. Hate speech is not acceptable, certainly not within our schools. And allowing it is in opposition to the message of never again that is taught by the Illinois Holocaust Museum located in our very village. When the Ku Klux Klan brazenly threatened to march down the streets of Skokie in the 1970s, there was an uproar and it was stopped. In Niles West, during school time, there was a pro-Hamas demonstration right after the brutal and horrific murder of over 1,400 innocent civilians, torturing women, children, cutting up babies, and taking 245 hostages. These chants at Niles West demonstration encouraged the killing of the Jews. I have lived in Skokie for the past 30 years. My son went to Niles North. It's a very different experience now than it was. 50 years after the attempt from the Ku Klux Klan to march in Skokie, the village of Skokie has an eternal memoriam to the Holocaust with the Illinois Holocaust Museum. There's an entire floor dedicated to the eradication of hate. All this while students at Niles West and Niles North call for the eradication of the Jews. their chance protest images and threats. Similarly, they have the audacity to do so in the village of Skokie, which, if allowed to continue, hallows the Illinois Holocaust Museum's messages against hate and anti-Semitism. Not standing up to hate and anti-Semitism in Skokie would be the ultimate irony and make a mockery out of the village, the officials, the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and those whose memory it memorializes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The trustee attorney told me I should call the office, and I apologize. I had spoken to Stephanie earlier this afternoon, and she didn't get a chance to connect me with Mr. Lockerbie, and I appreciate all the help she gave me. My name is Kyle Osborne, and I live in Wilmette. My family's lived there for the past off and on 50 years, and my condo neighbor, Jan, is with me. This is about an ongoing situation in Old Orchard, which hopefully you can help us address. In the southern restrooms at the arcade, the service center, the elevator has not worked for over a year. Therefore, the customers of the 4 stores down there have to walk down 19 steps at a 45 angle incline. My concern is that many of the people who have to do that are elderly, or whether they're elderly or not, this poses a severe physical threat. It also means that the tenants are having to face their customers not being able to get to them. I question why the elevator has not worked for a year. It's my understanding it's been cited by the village, as the village is the public agency who would do the inspection. So I'm asking if I have to make an appointment, I'm happy to do that to speak to the proper authorities. But I do question why at this point that elevator's not been working. I question whether this is an ADA issue, and hopefully it would not reflect on liability of the village if someone would tumble down those stairs and get hurt. So I'll be happy to call anybody in the village I need to help us further investigate this matter and get the mall to fix this for the customers. Those are small stores there, and as one of your trustees pointed out, you want to be business friendly. These are not large businesses, and they should have access to their customers as easily as possible. Thank you again, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
If you would leave your name and phone number with Ms. Luke.
I will. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me. My name is Janice Sukenik, and I too live in Wilmette. I frequent Erica Michaels' salon in the collection service down those steps. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm 86 years old. This is not easy. And please understand that it is an accident waiting to happen. It is very hard to go down the steps, not as much going up. I think most of us would agree with that. But I do hope something can be done soon about this elevator. The people who are in charge of that have told the owners, I've spoken to 2 of the 4 or 5 that are down there, that it would have been done last September. Well, now it was then this September. They have no intention of doing anything about it unless someone insists upon it. And you know, if I am not mistaken, there is a federal law for people who are handicapped. They have not been able to use the stairway. That's all. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Let me point out, though, there is a serious backlog on elevator repairs, the parts. If you go over to Barnes & Noble, the escalator has not been working for close to a month now.
Well, a month is okay, sir.
Ma'am, I understand. What I'm saying is, it could be that the elevator simply needs to be replaced, not repaired. because the parks might not even be available. So let us look into it. And you have the phone number, so we'll look into it.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
do
I
that.
really appreciate
We
that.
will. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a parent of a Niles North junior.
May we have your name?
Sorry, I'm Noel Zuckerman.
Okay.
I
Thank
also
you.
attended Niles North, class of '86. It's a very different place. Like I said, I'm a mother of a junior in high school, and I'm very sad that he and many other Jewish students are going to school each day feeling unsafe. Our school administrators are really not taking this opportunity to support their Jewish staff nor the students. Over the past few weeks, the students have been experiencing higher levels of both in-person and online harassment, negative comments, and definitely anti-Semitic remarks, just because they're Jewish. I cannot believe that in 2023 in Skokie, Illinois, this is the everyday norm. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Pardon me. Hi, Sid Stein. I have a daughter at Niles North, lived in Skokie most of my life. I'm an Army veteran, and I'm a teacher. Just real quick, the passing and implementation of the 3 amendments spoken about earlier will be a disaster for Skokie. You'll see. Anyway, what I came to speak about tonight is, as the several other speakers, is the recent pro-Hamas, and I'll call it out exactly as it is, pro-Hamas demonstration in Niles West recently. As the late great University of Chicago philosopher Alan Bloom noted, that there's not 2 equal valid sides to every issue. So, in a nutshell, if you're pro-Hamas, you're pro-Nazi. And we don't like Nazis in Skokie. And it's just that simple, period. Beheading of children, rape, slaughter. I don't need to belabor the point. We can all watch the news. I was in the U.S. Army. Military organizations have a code of conduct. In the U.S. military, it's the Uniform Code of Military Justice. In the Israeli Army, it's Tohar HaNeshek, purity of arms. Real soldiers, real warriors do not commit crimes against humanity. I became a history and political science teacher after I got out of the Army. You can distort the historical record. You can cherry pick certain facts, but that's not going to be good history. So, and you can quote the UN or Human Rights Watch, etc., but those organizations long ago lost credibility in dealing with the Arab-Israeli conflict. While there needs to be a Palestinian state, and I'll say it again, there needs to be a Palestinian state, one was established in 1948. As I say, I'm a history teacher. I know these things, okay? But if the incarnation of a new Palestinian state resembles what Hamas is doing in Gaza, you have a big problem. And you cannot rationalize or justify the October 7th, as we in the Jewish community call it, pogrom against the communities in southern Israel, okay? It's the largest loss of life since the Holocaust. So, any of our neighbors, once again, demonstrations pro-Hamas in Niles West, any of our neighbors that support or condone that or try to rationalize that, we reject you. We no longer recognize you as our friends and neighbors. I've said my piece. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Amelia Aloni, kidnapped by Hamas.
Good evening, Mayor Van Dusen and trustees, village trustees. Stephen Rich, Vice President of VCA. Just wanted to take a brief moment to express appreciation to the village. We have been treated so well by the commission, by the planning commission, by the building department, by the board, and appreciate everything and look very forward to joining the community and being a good part of it. So once again, appreciation for everything, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Jerry Brozak, I live in Optima in Skokie. I'm not Jewish, but I stand with the Jews. I support Israel, and I'm against anti-Semites. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dorit Helmer. Born and lived in Skokie my whole life, aside from a portion of growing up in Israel. I spoke here 2 weeks ago. I was the only one who raised the issue that was going on in our District 219 schools. As you can tell, there were many more voices who actually were able to make it here today. I want to reiterate, please, nothing has been done. We haven't really made any progress. We haven't really had anything done by the administration to kind of curtail some of these things going on. We just see it as escalating. So not only is it escalating in our schools, but you can see in our community, we've had these rallies over the last couple of weeks here. And I don't think Skokie should stand for rallies that are inducing hatred, violence. That's what happened in those demonstrations. So I please urge you and ask of you on behalf of all of our residents, it doesn't matter what race you are, what religion you are. Nobody wants to live in a town or in a world, but unfortunately we do, where hatred and violence are not condemned. And people just sit by and say, people have the freedom of speech. They can say whatever they want. No, they don't. Not when it's hateful, not when it's violence inducing. So I urge you, please. It's been 2 weeks. Things have escalated. Things have happened not only in our schools, but in our city, in our village. Please take this as something on the to-do list, something that needs to be addressed, because I think Skokie needs to take a stand and let its residents and people who come to visit Skokie know what is okay and what is not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board, Mayor, my name is Matt Jarvis. What brings me here tonight is the 6 members of the board that have chosen to file a motion to dismiss an ethics complaint, and in that motion request the maximum fine of $5,000 against its complainant, Trustee Johnson. Let me emphasize that they are not arguing that the statements made in this complaint are false, but instead argue against how the complaint is supported. In fact, nowhere in the motion do they offer any evidence that would put this ethics filing to rest. From the board failing to comply with the Open Meetings Act to voting to destroy evidence of those closed meetings, accountability and transparency have been an abject failure. As I listen to 3 members vote to destroy those recordings and another 3 members to abstain, not even for an instant did the mayor think through the outcome of the vote. He quickly declared the motion passed despite not receiving 4 affirmative votes, a necessary majority that the state and village requires. Perhaps the mayor should have considered why 3 of the board members found this "don't say nay" bill motion problematic, instead trying to find a way to jam it through. Then I found out that the chair of the Ethics Commission, Jonathan Minkus, was handpicked by the village legal counsel, Michael Lorge. And upon receiving their first ethics complaint, Minkus wrote that Lorge, quote, assured me would not require anything from me whatsoever, and that, quote, I did not know I was still on the commission. Does this sound like an ethics commissioner that is sincere in his duties? His commission then proceeded to hold 2 meetings in violation of the Open Meetings Act to dismiss the first 2 ethics complaint. I'd also like to bring to light that one of the duties of the village council is to train commissioners. To summarize, the ethics chair was handpicked by legal counsel, whose job description does not include nominations, then doesn't properly train said chair on how to legally run meetings. Because of this impropriety, the village manager requested to hire an outside attorney to run a volunteer commission, spending tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars to compensate for both parties' deficiencies and incompetence. After all these transgressions, the board's response was to retain Lorge in his position and to reappoint the chair that was assured that ethics was a do-nothing job. Currently, the board is busy kicking the can on how the hiring of legal counsel is handled because they can't fathom losing the ability to appoint this patronage position. I wish I could tell you more about the progress of the last two Ethics Commission meetings, but none of the minutes have been posted since their June meeting. For the board to act like they are so above reproach in this filing is insulting. I encourage everyone to read both the ethics complaint and the motion by the board on Trustee Johnson's Facebook page. I also strongly encourage the board to withdraw their motion that asks for this retaliatory fine, as it sets a chilling precedent, and insists that the Ethics Commission do its job to fully investigate all substantial allegations.
Mr. Jarvis, thank you.
I'm not quite done yet.
Yes, yes, your 3 minutes are up.
Are they?
Yes,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Bradan. I'm a Skokie resident, and I just wanted to come back to the piece around the 3 electoral reform referendums and express my appreciation that this plan that's been put forward by Mr. Lockerbie and his team is perfectly in alignment with the intent of these reforms as designed by the grassroots group that designed these and put them forward to the community for a vote. The implementation plan took into account all of the recommendations of the Skokie Alliance for Electoral Reform and integrated them with fidelity to those recommendations as well as to state law, and it's a good plan. So I urge you to vote yes on it, and I appreciate that work has gone forward. I'd also just like to say as a quick aside, I can't remember, was it you who asked about would there be more districts at some point? I didn't know this actually. I appreciated on the village's FAQ, it says that the state electoral recommendations are that for Skokie's size, we should actually have 5 electoral districts, that Skokie is that large. And so I just put it forward that just like we did here, at any point, the village could decide to put a referendum up to increase the number of districts if at some point that seemed appropriate, right? If the village grows, it's not that we're always stuck with 4. At any point, this body could put that referendum on for the citizens of Skokie to vote on. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. I do want to respond to the Niles North and Niles West. The village board at the last meeting made its position very clear on where we stand on what happened on October the 7th. I think it was very clear, it was unanimous. I urge you to go to the board meeting of District 219. We don't run the school district. School district is an independent body elected by the voters of the village of Skokie. I think it's very important that you go and let the board know what your thoughts are. When I see the school superintendent, I will tell him that a group came to the village board and expressed their concern. I understand your concerns, but bear in mind, they're separately elected, they're separately funded. You need to go to that school board. I understand. You either want to know what the reality is or you don't. And the reality is, I'm not going to debate it. I'm just simply telling you the legal facts. It's an independent unit of government. Look at your tax bill. You pay property taxes, you vote for it, and you elect the members of the District 219 board. And I can talk to the superintendent, but I don't run the school district. I don't negotiate the contracts at 219. They do. Just as you may come and you may want to express yourself on special use permit or something, that's within our purview. And we did express ourselves on what happened on October the 7th, and I think we've been very consistent on that. So with that, I would just ask you, please go to the District 219 board. You're always welcome here. Don't misunderstand me. And your concerns will be relayed to the superintendent of the schools. But like I said, there's nothing like showing up and expressing yourselves personally, just as it is here, so. Trustee Sumter.
No, Mayor. Member
Oh,
Lyons.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's okay, sorry. We'll just take a moment, thank you. As everybody alluded here this evening, or a few residents did, since the terror attack in Israel less than 30 days, Skokie residents have been mentally and physically there's been a lot of mental and physical trying on numerous residents in Skokie, causing residents to feel unsafe. However, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize how the entire Skokie Police Department have showed an exemplary level of professionalism and support under the leadership of Chief Brian Baker and Deputy Chief Jesse Barnes. I am well aware that the additional rallies, vigils, hate crime investigations take a toll on our officers and staff. Let me be clear, I am not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that we don't have enough in our department or staff. I just think that we could not have forecasted what has transpired these last 30 days. In light of my own personal experience in requiring additional police support this past month, thank you, I would like to have a clear picture of how this has impacted our police department. I am asking as a trustee for a report for a future board meeting. I am not asking for a specific deadline, to include but not limited to the following data. An update on how hiring and how many vacancies there are within the department. What are our recruiting tactics? How many officers are presently out due to disability or any other reason? What are the projections regarding retirements in the next 2 years, and do we have a plan in place to fill those upcoming vacancies? Have we had any success in hiring laterals, and is Skokie offering competitive lateral salaries? In light of the recent additional calls and rally support, how much overtime has this cost the department and has affected our budget? And have we addressed the burnout and the mental health of the officers and staff who are dealing with this on a daily basis? Again, I want to make it very clear, my questions are in support of the incredible work that this village manager, village staff have done, and in support of our police department. We have to ensure the safety of our village, and we thank you for that. Thank you.
Give us a little bit of time, that's an awful lot
That's why I didn't give you a
of
limit,
information.
and John, I can give you the bullet points.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Sumter.
I move we adjourn.